New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Good evening, and welcome to the Miracle of Prosperity here on the New Thought Media Network. I'm your host, the Reverend Dr. Jim Webb. I serve as the Senior Minister of the Tacoma Metaphysical Chapel in Silver Spring, Maryland. I'm also the author of a number of books, including The Soul of Prosperity, several ebooks that support it, including Prosperity from A to Z, Forgive Your Way to Prosperity, 30 P's for Prosperity, and Create Your Self-Manifesting Vision Board. All of these are available on Amazon, and all are available now on audiobook. So every Sunday evening, it's my honor and pleasure to come and chat with you about prosperity. And we chat about a number of different types of prosperity, not just money and stuff. So we may talk about professional prosperity, where you have the perfect job with wonderful pay, where you provide a wonderful service in a wonderful way, a la Florence Scovel Shinn. We may discuss relationship prosperity, where you endeavor to create a loving, supportive, and accepting relationship with yourself from within, so that your outer relationships, which are always a reflection of your inner energy, show you love, support, and acceptance as well. And therefore you have relationship harmony with yourself and with your world. We may look at logistical prosperity, where your life just works easily and effortlessly with a minimal amount of struggle. We, of course, look at spiritual prosperity, where we find the peace that passes all understanding and have an indwelling sense of happiness, joy, and fulfillment, no matter what is going on in our outer world. So we look at prosperity from a broad perspective. And each week, we might look at a barrier to prosperity and how to remove it so that all the prosperity in the universe that is available to us flows to us easily. Or we may look at ways and techniques to enhance our prosperity consciousness, so that we can draw more prosperity to us, and so that we can be drawn to more prosperity. So tonight, we've got a very special show. The title of it is De-Ego, Your Way to Prosperity. And the larger title is De-Escalating Your Ego, in order that you might find prosperity. Because one of the key saboteurs to your prosperity is your ego. It's so much a saboteur that I devoted a whole chapter of my book, The Soul of Prosperity, to the inner saboteurs, most of which are parts of the ego. So when I did that chapter of the book, people often asked, what is the ego anyway? And earlier tonight, I had an idea on how to describe the ego. It's like an M&M. An M&M has a colored hard shell, and that colored hard shell is actually between you and the delicious chocolate inside. Well, the ego is like the hard shell of an M&M. It has a color, the colors are different. The hard shell of the M&M sometimes seems to be impenetrable, and we think that the M&M, whether yellow, green, blue, red, or whatever, we think the M&M is that color. But that's just the shell. It's all chocolate inside. Well, we have different shells, different colors, different genders, different geographic locations, different ethnicities, different political persuasions. Those are all like the shell on the M&M. And we have learned, unfortunately, to define ourselves by these things and not to define ourselves by the well of light that lives within us. For no matter what we are on the outside, no matter what experiences we have had, no matter how we identify in terms of race, gender, geography, economics, or experiences, inside we are still as God created us, as love. And the ego presents a barrier between us as love and the love that would show up in our outer world as prosperity. So in order to experience the deepest, most joyful, and most fulfilling prosperity that you desire, it may be important to de-escalate your belief in yourself as an ego, or to de-ego yourself, and to recognize and remember that you are the holy beloved of God, no longer constrained by the hard shell around your delicious chocolate. So that's what we're going to discuss tonight. De-ego your way to prosperity. And we've got a special guest with whom we are going to discuss that. One of your favorites and one of my favorite people, the Reverend Daniel Neusom, author of the book On Earth as It Is in Heaven, as well as the book You Are Here on the Earth to Enjoy Everything, and an upcoming book called God, I Let You In. Welcome, Reverend Daniel Neusom.
Thank you, Reverend Dr. Webb. It is always such a joy to do this podcast with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for agreeing to be our guest tonight. First of all, let's discuss some of the ways that the ego can actually sabotage our prosperity. And I'm going to throw one out there. Perhaps we have had economic shame. Perhaps we were born poor. And perhaps there is still a part of us that identifies as unworthy after being born in poverty in an environment where our biggest fetish is actually money and the feelings of inadequacy there. Is that an example of how the ego and our identification with the ego can block our prosperity?
It certainly is. The Spirit of God in our service today began with love and inviting us to ask for the miracle of the transformation of our hearts so that we love ourselves absolutely, completely, unconditionally, with all of our hearts, soul, minds, and being. So if there is a part of yourself that has shame, that feeling of shame is an energetic block, and it has a voice. It says, I'm not worthy of receiving love, love in the form of money, or love in the form of peace of mind, being loved in relationships. So, of course, the energy of shame, which is part of the ego, would block prosperity. Absolutely.
Yes. And how would our conditioning and who we believe ourselves to be in the pecking order of the world, how would that impact our ability to experience the prosperity that we deserve and desire?
Well, the world, of course, tells you, especially in this country, that
Yes.
Who and what you should be
Yes.
is male, white, Christian, heterosexual,
And wealthy.
and wealthy. Thank you.
Yes.
So if you are centered in your ego and you're not those things, you are not going to have an adequate amount of self-love and self-acceptance. Again, your energy to receiving the bounty that is God's will for us, and the bounty that is God, is blocked by your ego's thoughts and feelings about who and what you are and what you deserve to receive. So all of this is showing us that the trajectory of human evolution is to move out of the ego consciousness and in to the God consciousness, where we all know ourselves as the holy, beloved, innocent creations of God, full stop.
And that's an excellent way to describe our journey and our walk on the earth. We come here as an ego filled with miseducation, misinformation, misgivings, and misdirection. And that misinformation may cause us to have a painful walk. And at some point, something within us says, something's wrong with this. I'm not here to be in pain. I am put on the earth to enjoy everything, wink. And we then seek a different path, find a different path, grow out of the ego. Now, we make it sound really simple, but one of the things that I have learned and taught on my path to prosperity has been how to identify the ego, because it can be very subtly tricky, evasive, and it can hide behind a smile. So let's talk about how we can identify the subtle maneuvers of the ego, because it can be quite tricky. And I'll give you an example. Something happened recently, and I asked Spirit, what should I do about this? And Spirit said, absolutely nothing. and it was so amazing. And this is why quite often the ego is depicted as a serpent, camouflaged in the branches of the tree, doppled so you can't see it until it's ready to strike. Because I asked Spirit, because I ask Spirit first these days instead of last. And so I asked Spirit, what should I do? And Spirit said, absolutely nothing. And then the voice of the ego slithered underneath that idea and said, but maybe you should do this, and maybe you should do that, and maybe you should call this person, and maybe you should call that person. And then the voice of the ego started giving all these justifications for why I should do that. And I'm like, man, ego, you are something else. Because then I extrapolated out what would happen if I did this, and what would happen if I did that, what would happen if I did this. And I thought, drama. Who wants drama? So why don't you just do nothing and let God take care of it? But the ego was very persuasive. The ego had me with my hand on my phone. Amen. Thank goodness I didn't, because it would have blown up in my face. So let's talk about how crafty the ego is, how subtle the ego is, how brilliant the ego is, and how that evolved. Because it evolved because it was a survival mechanism, or so we thought. And so it learned to be crafty. So let's talk about the ego a little bit more and how we can identify some key indicators that it is the ego and not our God self talking to us.
So is that the invitation to bring forward the questions to be asked of the self?
In a subtle way, yes. And let's do the last ones first.
All right, there was a situation involving egos that I was involved with, and I went to Spirit and asked, how can this situation be healed? And I was given these questions to ask of the self. And here are the questions. And the answer to the questions, if the answer is yes, there's your ego. So the first question is, do you need to compete or prove your worth to others? Do you need to prove or show that you know more than someone else? Do you feel hurt, criticized, or rejected if your ideas or opinions are not accepted? Do you feel competitive with other people? And there are some questions that are in my book, You Are Here on the Earth to Enjoy Everything. Do you believe one religion or spiritual path is superior to another? Do you believe that God has a chosen people? Do you believe God favors some people over others or loves some people more than others? Do you have a strong racial identity? Do you need to feel separate from other people? Do you need to feel superior to other people? So if the answers to any of those questions is yes, don't judge it. Don't judge yourself, but explore the why and call for its complete transformation. So what Spirit gave to us in our service today is the fact that every single human being on earth has an ego.
Yes.
And the whole purpose of the reincarnational cycles of life, aside from enjoying the things there are to enjoy as a human being, is to evolve out of ego consciousness and into agape, into unconditional love for self and others. So we are not to judge ourselves for being an ego, because that's what we all are. But once we discover that we are an ego, the key is to make the choice to start the path of self-transformation, because what the ego is, Reverend Dr. Jim, as you know, it's the unlovingness within us toward ourselves and each other. And it came to me that song that John Lennon wrote that we all know so well, Imagine, all the picture that he painted with those lyrics, that is what life would be like for us on this earth if we did not have an ego standing in the way, that colored hard shell over the M&M.
Yes.
So that's my sermon.
What a wonderful sermon. And it helps us to understand why the ego would block prosperity. If you need an extra incentive to begin examining and transforming your ego, because the ego is your not enoughness. The ego is your feeling of unworthiness. The ego is your feeling of being oppressed and victimized. The ego is your feeling of being unfavored by God. And if these are your feelings, these are your creations. So if you feel victimized, you're going to create experiences of victimization. If you feel unfavored by God, you are going to create situations where you feel unfavored in your world. If you feel inadequate, you will experience situations where your, quote, inadequacies are shown to you, explained to you, and where you are withheld from because of your, quote, inadequacies. So the ego, as it creates your life, creates a life of hell. But your God self, as you choose to migrate from your ego consciousness to your highest consciousness, your God self creates the world of heaven. For your God self knows of its deservingness. Your God self is not judgmental, critical, or in any way condemnatory. So your God self would only allow all your good. Your God self is of love and not of criticism or hate. So your God self would attract only loving circumstances. And so if you need an incentive to let go of the ego and the perks of the ego, that sugar high perk of feeling superior to someone else, that sugar high perk of feeling like the righteous victim, that sugar high perk of believing that self-denial is holy, and so you deny yourself in order to gain God's favor, when in truth you already have God's favor just as you are. If you need an incentive to release the ego consciousness and to allow more of the God consciousness, just understand that your ego is addicted to pain and suffering, for that is what it knows. And if you want to break that addiction, then you have an option, and that is to cultivate the light within, to cultivate the consciousness of your highest self, to cultivate the emergence of your God self and the diminishment of the ego and its voices. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this after the break, and we're going to answer your questions on how you can address, dismantle, and disarm the ego here on the New Thought Media Network.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
What if the person you think you are is just a fraction of who you truly are? What if years of conditioning and surviving in a challenging world have left you clinging to strategies and beliefs that mask your truest nature? I'm Catherine Duca, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach, and you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? A show that looks beneath our psychological masks and uncovers our profoundly messy, beautiful, brilliant, tender-hearted essence. Join me as we go in search of the hidden power of our true selves. I'm so glad you're here.
And we're back here on the Miracle of Prosperity on the New Thought Media Network. And tonight we're discussing De-Ego, Your Way to Prosperity, with the Reverend Daniel Neusom. And we're taking your questions. Now, quite often I get questions texted to me during the break. And during the break, I can put on my glasses and read them. So since I can't read this now without my glasses, I'm going to paraphrase it. The viewer said, in essence, quite often I fly off the handle, and when I realize that I am in ego, the damage has already been done. So how do I address and arrest the ego before it has a chance to do damage?
I want to say something, and I'm going to get to the question that you asked. But somebody in these chats wrote, "This is so healing," and I have to say, Reverend Jim, even before you brought me on camera and you were talking at the beginning of the show, I felt this healing energy. I felt like I was being changed, and I was part of my ego was being dissolved. Yes. And then right before we went to break, I had the same experience. So you are really bringing in the Holy Spirit, and it is very healing. So, I'm a tough teacher, but so you have to, whoever asks this question, you have to really be clear. And I do believe that you are, but you got to take this into prayer, that you want to stop flying off the handle. And if you are really clear that that's what you want, and even ask yourself and tell yourself, why is it that I want to stop flying off the handle? God is going to come in and open a part of you that can observe what you are doing, what you are thinking. And you will have the ability to, when you're interacting with people, there's going to be this part of you that actually is observing what you're doing, and you will make a choice not to fly off the handle. There's probably some underlying anger that you have, and flying off the handle is a way to express it. And if you're very clear that you no longer want to be that way, God is going to help you. And it is just by opening this part of you that my teacher, Ann White, called the observer. I do want to say that I met my husband when I was 46, going on 47. So it was later in life. And we've had this amazing relationship. We really only had one little quote unquote fight that lasted for about 5 minutes, but it's because I have the ability to think before I speak, to process what's going on. Oh, I have a lot to say here. The other thing to say, I want to say in answering this question is, do emotional release, meaning let yourself really go back in your life and bring up everything that has angered you about being on this planet, and everything you've experienced with other human beings that has caused you to become angry. Get that pillow out, that bataka, and have some emotional release sessions. And that way you're dislodging the anger that's living in your emotional body so that you won't be set off easily by other people. Because when we have anger that's accumulated in that part of us, the least little thing can just set us off. So I know my answer was long, but that's my answer.
Thank you. What a wonderful answer. I'm reminded of Ken Wapnick, who was a very prominent teacher of A Course in Miracles. And one of the things he said was the ego always speaks loudest and first. So when you hear the ego, don't act out and speak out on it. Instead, just breathe. Just breathe. Take a breath before you say or do anything, and then go within instead of lashing out.
Yes.
And, that I find to be a very useful strategy, to just breathe. And then, interestingly enough, I realize when I breathe that it has nothing to do with the other person. The other person, I call them my angel, because they have triggered me. And they have triggered me into growth. They have triggered me into healing. So when I breathe, that little reset causes me to focus on what is going on within me. And generally, an adult trigger has something to do with something that happened earlier in our lives. And so I ask myself, how old am I? Where am I? Who am I with? What did I experience? What did I learn? And how does that cause me pain? And how do I learn something new so that I no longer, and what is the new truth I need to understand that would release this pain? And that process, when I stop and interrupt the ego from acting out, can be very useful. And one of the lessons in A Course in Miracles that helps me apply that is, above all else, I want to see. Above all else, I want to see things differently. Because what we often want to do with our ego is we want to hit back when we feel hit. We want to feel superior when someone has made us feel inferior. We want to feel justified in our victimhood, because that righteous victimhood quite often is a tool for receiving attention, and attention is a proxy for love. And so I say, above all these, I call them sugar highs of the ego, because they get you high for a moment, but then, like an addiction, you find yourself craving more and more of that. So you act out more and more of the ego, and ultimately it's destructive. So I say, instead of the sugar high that this ego hit would give me, what is the spiritual nutrition that would feed my soul? So above all else, above being right, I want to be at peace. Above being a victim, I want to understand and heal the part of me that felt second class. Above being perpetually put down, I want to understand what within me is causing me to feel less than, so that I can heal it and remember that I am a holy, beloved child of God. So that interruption, by interrupting the energetic current by breathing instead of reflexively lashing out, helps me to do that. And it helps me to make the choice. Above all else, I want to see. Above all else, I want to see things differently. And it helps me bypass the sugar high of the ego and get the spiritual nutrition of soul growth instead. So you may also have some questions on how we can address and heal the ego when it acts out. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat, either here or text me. Some people do text me, and that's cool too. And we'll address those. But we're going to go on a quick break, and we'll be right back while you put in your next questions.
New Thought Radio, music from all your favorite New Thought artists. From Jamie Lula, Karen Drucker, Gary Lynn Floyd, Ricky Byers, Daniel Nahmod, Eddie Watkins Jr., and many, many more. 24/7 New Thought Radio. Positively inspiring.
New Thought Media Network is excited to present Divine Science Everywhere, Fridays at 2 p.m. Mountain Time and 4 p.m. Eastern. Come explore a modern experience of divine science. With Reverend Joy Fletcher, Reverend Jeff Radcliffe, and Bishop Durrell Watkins. Join us as we open our eyes to divine science everywhere we look. Fridays on New Thought Media Network.
New Thought Media Network is on the rise. We're looking to grow with you. Do you have technical media experience or perhaps a desire to learn? Are you willing to volunteer your precious time and attention? We share this message to benefit all. If you possess a computer with a camera and a microphone, we will share our knowledge with you. Behind the scenes or being the star, let us bless our one. Contact us at info@ntmedia.org.
And we're back here on the Miracle of Prosperity on the New Thought Media Network. We're discussing Unego, Your Way to Prosperity. So far, we've discussed all the ways the ego can sabotage the good that we deserve. We've discussed ways to identify the ego and some techniques for diffusing the toxicity of the ego with Reverend Daniel Neusom. So we have a question from Carl, and we want to put that question up so that we can address it. This question is from Carl. Could the ego be defined as an error, false belief, the limiting self, where the divine idea is our boundless self? What say you, Reverend Daniel Neusom?
Well, the short answer to that question is yes, absolutely. And in fact, the angelic guides who came through my channel when I first started to work professionally as a channel called the ego, the false ego. I do want to say something else. As you know, and perhaps many of your viewers know, Eva Pierrakos was the original channel of the path of self-transformation. And the guide that came through Eva said, the existential guilt that those of us who are in human form in the reincarnational cycles of life have, the existential guilt is not transforming the ego or the false ego, not doing the work of transforming that part of ourselves that is unloving toward ourselves and each other. So that existential guilt for not doing the work of dismantling your ego is absolutely a blockage to your prosperity, your fulfillment, your pleasures supreme. So I just wanted to say that in my answer to, I believe his name is Carl. He's the one who said this is so healing, is absolutely yes.
Yes. And one of the ways that we begin to dismantle the error-laden self and to embrace and work out of and act out of the highest self is by continually exposing ourselves to our highest self. We do so by sitting in meditation, sitting in prayer, and doing the work of recognizing the parts of us that are unloving, releasing the toxic emotions of that unloving part in emotional release. I have a whole chapter in my book, The Soul of Prosperity, on emotional release, because it's so pivotal to releasing the energy, the patterning, and the vibratory rates of the lower self, and sitting with God, becoming infilled with the light of God instead, and seeing out of God's eyes and acting out of that higher self, that higher vibratory rate, that higher frequency that we allow when we release the lower energetic frequencies. And that's how we continue our walk away from the ego self and into the higher self. Now, Tierney has a question as well. How much do you feel our fast-paced society encourages ego toxicity?
That is a very deep, deep question. So ego toxicity can manifest as, I actually read the word as anxiety, but she said toxicity. The fast-paced society discourages introspection. It discourages looking within, feeling within, dealing with the issues that are in your ego consciousness. So the issues just stay there, and they're added to as you experience more pain, more anger, more rejection. It builds up, and so the ego becomes more and more toxic, and you actually start to magnetize to yourself more and more painful experiences, because it's the spiritual nature within you. It's its way of saying, look at me, look at me, look at me. I've got to get your attention so we can heal. So yes, being distracted by everything in this world that can distract you definitely adds to ego toxicity and to fear and anxiety, because if you're not working with transforming the ego, your guilt is going to increase, which then increases your fear, because if there's guilt inside of you, there's some part of you that knows that you're going to attract and create some form of punishment. So this is very, very deep.
Yes. And one of the ways to address this, the society can go at 100 miles an hour if it chooses. You take a break. Take a break daily. Take a break to rest. Take a break to relax. Take a break to be introspective. Take a break to heal. Take a break to sit with God. Take a break regularly, even if it's just a breathe break. Just take a break and realize that you'll get where you're going even more. Because quite often when I'm tasked with lots to do, and I feel like taking a break would detract from that, what I remember in the visual image that I hold is the image of an Indy car taking a pit stop. Within a minute in the pit stop, they change the tires. They put more oil in the car. They make sure that everything is done right. And it takes only a minute. And then that Indy car goes back at full speed. And since everybody has to do it, that Indy car will not lose the race. It's necessary. So your pit stops are necessary to maintain your energetic, emotional, and spiritual equilibrium, and to keep you from being a victim of your ego consciousness. So thank you, Tierney, for that wonderful question as well. So, Reverend Neusom, I want to thank you also for being our guest tonight for such a profound and robust discussion. What are you working on these days?
What am I working on these days? Well, look, there's my website address, danielneusom.com. So I'm working on serving the people in my congregation at the Sacred Light Fellowship, as well as the people who come to me for private transformational sessions. I am continuing to plug away on my new book, God, I Let You In, the experience of God beyond religion. I've got a spiritual psychic development class every Wednesday and Thursday. We've got probably 2 spaces available for this Wednesday, this class. Sacred Light Fellowship. Oh, that's the wrong address. It's sacredlightfellowship.org, not .com, .org. Anyway, this class teaches you how to open your own channel to the Holy Spirit of God and to use that for the transformation of your ego, as well as receiving messages for yourself and other people. So those are some of the things that I am working on. But most importantly, I am working on being a presence of love on the earth, because I am really tired of everything else that is not love. What are you working on these days, Reverend Dr. Jim Webb?
Well, in addition to my Thanksgiving feast, which I am working on preparing, I'm working
in the kitchen.
I hear our producer in the background laughing at me. If I were an ego, I would be offended. But since I'm in love, I love myself, regardless of how my Thanksgiving meal is prepared. So, in addition to that, I'm looking forward to the after the holidays, because I have an annual thing that I do where in December, I make available gift certificates so that you can give the gift of insight to your loved ones, to your friends, or to yourself. I do these holiday gift certificates for a reading with me at a discounted rate so that you can give them to your friends or to yourself. So I will have them available after the holidays. So stay tuned for your opportunity to get gift certificates to give as holiday presents to your friends or families or to yourself. And that's what I'm working on, as well as a new book. Yes, you had something else, Reverend Daniel?
I'm going to do a plug for you. Take advantage of his sessions. We were together on a trip and he gave me a message and it was so transformative. It wasn't just words. It just changed me. So that's all I wanted to say. I wanted to give a plug for your work, but please go ahead.
Well, thank you. Well, that was a great way to conclude what I'm working on. Give yourself the gift of insight. Give yourself the gift of healing. Give yourself the gift of an awareness of what awaits you in the next year. So that's what I'm working on after this Thanksgiving, and they'll be available after this Thanksgiving holiday. So stay tuned. In the meantime, I want to thank you again, Reverend Daniel Neusom. I want to thank our producer, Michael Mangus, despite him laughing in the background at my holiday plans. And I also, of course, want to thank our viewers tonight. We hope this discussion has been helpful and useful, and we look forward to seeing you next week and every Sunday night here on the New Thought Media Network. Good night.